Okay, just a quick update. So remember I said we have to simmer this for 20 minutes. We're actually at, I'm just looking at my timer now, we're at 12 minutes to go. So an example of what is simmering, the pot, just bring this down. Let me lift this up. Simmering is just slowly bubbling low. It shouldn't be rolling. You can see the oil is still formed, lightly bubbling, and I like to cover it when it's simmering. My heat is on literally low, on the lowest setting. I keep it covering, and that's simmering. Simmering is just for it to go. You can simmer it uncovered. I just like to keep it covered, and I'll reduce some of that liquid later by taking it off. So that's a visual example of what simmering is. So we got to do that for 11 more minutes. All right, so I took this off of the stove, put it here, and there is still some steam. You can see when I'm stirring this, you may not be able to see it, but there is still some steam coming off. It is still hot, because you can't go to the next step of adding in the egg until this is cooled. Otherwise, the egg will just cook right away in this heat. We don't want that to happen. We want the egg to start cooking once we bake and have assembled this into the moussaka tray. So one way to help with cooling down anything in a pot, and from owning some Greek family restaurants growing up, it's always good to thaw like a turkey in the sink. So one thing you can do is you put a plug into the sink, get some cold water, and we're gonna basically, from there, we're gonna take our pot. We're not adding water in here. So what I would normally do is not put this pot in until I have enough water. But you do have to be careful, because you don't want this pouring water going into the pot of flavorful goodness that's going to go into our moussaka. So while this is filling up, I'll do my best to come back over here. And you notice how I had that's really hot. What I'm going to have to do is I'll continue on this. So I'm going to transfer this now. So I've just transferred the pot into here. Now it's getting quite full. But you can see that the water's almost up to the level of the pot. What this water does, it's basically, you don't want to throw something like this into your refrigerator. A lot of people, when they're done cooking, like to throw all their hot food in the fridge. That's just going to make your fridge go into like overdrive. And any food that's near it will also rise in temperature, which could change the shelf life and fridge life of your food. So I like to do it in the sink. This cool, cold water that's outside is basically, the metal is a great conductor for heat. So all the heat, this water here will basically, I don't know if you want to call it it's not quite osmosis, but by the cool water on the outside cooling the pot, that energy is basically cooling everything in here as well. And so I would move my tap to the other side. If anything, if you wanted to just give it a couple stirs every, 4 to 5 minutes, or when you come over, it just lets more heat get to the outside of the pan, of the pot, so that the cool water can do its job. All right, so we're gonna do that. We're gonna keep going until this sauce is cool, and then we'll go to the next step. All right. All right. So the meat sauce is cool now in the sink. It's a lot cooler, ready for the eggs. All we're doing now is we're just gonna beat up some eggs in a bowl, and we're going to get those ready, because those are eventually going to be going into the pot. So we've got our bowl here. We're just gonna break. These are actually small eggs. These are not what you'd call large eggs. These are small. So I'm gonna break these. You can do that old fancy one-hand thing, but I'm not as cool as the people who can do that. So I'm just gonna do it the traditional two-hand way of breaking eggs. And like that. It's always good breaking eggs. You feel like you're going into nice breakfast. Anyway, got the family behind me listening to me. Yeah, I know. That's Eli. So we're gonna get our whisk. I'm going to just simply beat those up. And yet, this being another ingredient we're adding, it's always good to season it appropriately, just so that it doesn't take away from what we already got. Get some pepper in there. Mix those up. That all done, and then we're going to get our pot. That was in the sink. I think we got that here. And what we're going to do is just slowly stir this in, folding it in. These eggs, like I said earlier, are going to be our binding agent. So what they will do is help pull this and hold it together after and as it's cooking. It'll cook and just give a little more, call it glue, in our moussaka. So make sure you stir this for about 30 seconds to a minute. Make sure you get that egg all throughout. And then this is just about ready to be put in, and we're going to start our layering process now. Okay, so before we actually start assembling this, even though we just put the egg into the meat mixture, now we got to make a bechamel sauce. At that point, we're going to have every ingredient we need to start assembling this thing and getting it into the oven. So to start, we want to start with getting our oven on. Get a pot on the top. Basically what we're gonna need for this is this is 1/3 of a cup of just regular flour. It's a little mounded, not too much, but 1/3 of a cup. And we also need a measuring 1 metric cup. We need to get milk. So the milk part, we're gonna put some milk in a minute, but we also need some butter, just in the fridge here. We need some butter or margarine. So we already used some butter. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show you how bechamel can also be made with margarine. I'm sure all the chefs and professionals out there will tell you all not to do that. But this is not about spending all your money and doing everything one way. Not everyone can afford that. So what we're going to do is we're going to put in about 4 tablespoons of butter. In fact, I'd even say this is more like 1/2 cup. The reason is because the bechamel sauce has to cover everything. So we're going to put in about 1/2 cup of margarine. I'm going to let this melt down. Then in the meantime, as that's working, we've got our trusty whisk ready to start doing that, stirring that. And for the bechamel, you're going to need your margarine, you're going to need milk, you're going to need the flour I showed you. You're also going to need some nutmeg and salt and pepper. So the nutmeg, make sure you have that by your side. Again. And here's my margarine melting in here. I'm going to put some salt and pepper in here. It's good to just season that. Get that ready. So there's some pepper. And also get some salt. There we go. Now I would say if you were using butter, you will get more of a beautiful flavor out of it. It'll just kick it up, but we're gonna just go with this. And after you get this going, what we're going to do is take our flour and we're going to whisk it in to the butter. And this, as it gets mixed and the heat's coming up, it's gonna turn into, obviously, a paste. Okay, so we just make sure we get it all around the pot. Keep putting that flour in there. Get that in. My heat is on number 4 right now. You can see that paste happening right now. And then while that's there, what you do is we're going to get 4 cups of our milk in here. So there's one. Start pouring some in. Well, we can pour 1 cup in first. Let's stir that around, get that mixed. Get that mixed. Okay, so that's thoroughly mixed. Getting another cup of milk. Get that in. Mix that around. Now it obviously seems pretty watery right now. I'm going to get another cup of milk. Oh, not quite enough in that left there. So let's do a quick milk change. Should have got milk at the store. Milk. Get our cup. This is number 3. And we're gonna do number 4. It's good to hear we got the dogs on guard, protecting the kitchen. And we're done with that. You know what? Give a little splash just for a little more. Now this is still heating, so we're just going to, the key is you got to keep stirring this as your milk is heating up, otherwise it will burn on the bottom of your pot. So it's one of those great times to tell you a story. Being careful at the kitchen, especially at the stove, is important. I remember one time years ago, at least probably 12, 13 years ago, my wife was cooking at home and I was out, and I came home to see the fire department and everybody outside my house. Fortunately, there was no major fire. It's just there was some grease on the stove and it got out of control, and our children were a lot younger then, so they did end up dropping and rolling on their way out the door, and it was quite the debacle. So this is going to keep stirring, and it's going to, as it heats up, it's going to start thickening.